Whatever role you play, whatever level you reach, whether you take the lead, the responsibility, the training, the corners, the kids to the game, or the nets down at the end, the game remains the same. It's the standards you set that make the difference. Accredited leagues and clubs lead by example, raise the bar, and fly the flag of respect and diversity for football in England. From the first time to the first team, from the boardroom to the changing room, from early morning pickups to last-minute winners. Greatness isn't just earned by action on the pitch, but by the work, standards and spirit of it. Built to last, made by you. When you're accredited, you're not just part of it, you're the beating heart of it.
Hello everyone, and a warm welcome to the third in our series of extra time webinars, part of the Accredited England Football Programme. It's great to have your company. As I mentioned, it's the third in our series, and that VT perfectly describes how on the pitch performance is supported by all of the hard work of it. And I'm delighted to say we have a very special guest joining us today. Simon Weaver from Harrogate Town Football Club has done the most incredible job taking that football club through the levels of the pyramid, and we're going to be exploring how he's done that, the different factions that have gone into that success, and linking it back, of course, to the work that we're doing as part of this England Football Club Consultant Programme as well. Jamie Bunch is here as well. Jamie, this webinar, Football Development, it's a huge subject, and it quite deliberately follows our last conversation around governance. Why is that?
Yeah, good evening, Charlotte. Good evening, everyone. Yeah, I think, as we said, and I think most people know, the new framework that we've put in via the self-assessment and the club sort of framework that we're rolling out, football development is right up there next to governance. And as part of that development of the framework, my own experiences in the professional game was working at a couple of clubs, most notably probably my time at West Brom. And I was really fortunate to be at West Brom when we had a real investment into sort of our football development strategy. And I think what we recognised and what we want to really explore and support the clubs into the pyramid is absolutely governance is probably the most important thing off the field that we have to get right. But actually on the field, it requires the same application, the same planning, the same investment, the same support. And the journey on the pitch, the experiences on the pitch don't just happen by luck, Charlotte. And that's why we've really put football development at the top of our framework. Absolutely, as we spoke with John Devine, there's some really important things that we have to get right off the field. Absolutely. But where the game is moving to, and I'm sure we'll talk about it tonight, those experiences I was fortunate to have in professional game, and not just at West Brom. I worked at sort of, low down in the pyramid when Burton Albion came up, and then I was fortunate to go to Tottenham Hotspur. The investment and the planning and the detail that goes now into the game on the pitch, and that's not just performance, it's in the participation areas as well, that it is moving at such a pace now that I think it's really important that we really support our clubs through the pyramid and into the recreational game, that the effort and the application that's needed. It's our job to try and work with the clubs to support them on that journey.
And to help support, of course, we are hosting this webinar and we have the chat function available. So please do make the most of it. If you have a question you would like us to pose to Simon, we will get round to posing that question. So please, this is such a unique opportunity and the perfect time now for me to introduce Simon. And firstly, Simon, thank you for so generously giving up your time. You have had a busy weekend and got a little old trip to Salford at the weekend, is it? I'm sure the preparation has already begun for that. So we really, really appreciate it. And I guess, firstly, can you take us back to the start of your journey in football development and your role as a coach?
Yeah, okay. So as my career was coming towards the end, back in 2008, I was 31. I'd broken my leg for, I think, the third time, and I was slowing up somewhat. And it was a tricky time, but I'd always thought about coaching. And towards the latter stage of my career, had a real passion for just coaching a local group in Rotherham, near where I lived, and it was just I think I had about a quarter of an AstroTurf, an old school AstroTurf, where some youths would jog down, and some of them come in their own cars, and it wasn't the easiest of starts, but one that I just really enjoyed, on a Thursday night, and with that got used to, talking to a group and trying to enthuse a certain few that may not have been as passionate as me. But it was good. It was a good starting point. And after that, it was, obviously doing my coaching badges, and then my level 2, then level 3. And then I got the opportunity at Harrogate.
Do you look back on that time now? Obviously, you're coaching within the EFL, and I'm sure each week, it must be amazing, and you're getting so many kind of learning and enriching experiences from that. But you mentioned, that situation of maybe getting a little patch of turf and having to infuse other people, which is something a lot of people on this call or watching back will resonate with. To me, it seems like a pretty good grounding to then build off of and achieve your success. Do you ever kind of think back to those moments at all?
Yeah, I do. I've only got fond memories, really, because it was, planning for a session and making sure that, there were some tricky characters, with the caps on. I'm thinking, take your cap off, really engage with it, and your earrings at the same time. And it was just, I remember thinking, coming straight off a football course, and just get there, really prepare right, make sure everything's clean and the equipment's right, and then clear off any cigarette packets off the AstroTurf, and just try and set a certain standard, so that the lads think, actually, this is all set out before I arrive, and just try to nail some basics so that I could get buy-in from some of the more tricky characters. But I enjoyed it, and I thought, well, at the age groups that I was coaching, 16, 17-year-olds, they should be fit, and they should want to run around. And so, but there was lots of work with the football, and it was just, as much as anything, not draining the life out of lads, just being overcomplicated. It was trying to make it an enjoyable experience.
What's really interesting, principles and standards you put in place, which links really nicely to the first webinar we hosted around identity. Your success, in part, obviously, is what you have produced on the football pitch. But in turn, do you think it's been helpful understanding the operational side of a football club, what it means to have an identity, and how that identity on the pitch has to replicate what's going off, and how that all comes together to help a football club become robust, to help it become sustainable, which is what every club joining us today really wants to kind of go towards?
Yeah, I mean, I'll be honest, I've made a lot of mistakes, over the years, especially the last weekend for a start. We lost 2-1, but in the early days, it's a battle to establish your own identity and to think, well, actually, what do I want to see out there? And it was a blank canvas somewhat in the first year, but based on a really small budget for that level, which is Conference North, and so had to beg, steal, and borrow players, and yet, I think underneath it all, the more I've been involved and immersed in it, I want to go into work and see a sort of certain standard and style of play, and win, lose, or draw with good people. And I think it's the people that have really driven us forward. Try to be as positive as possible as a culture, and with no one cheating it, which is not easy in this day and age. Because you will have it filters down in the game. It does, the egos and involvement of people, sort of self-entitlement, and we try to really just get away from that and just be enthusiastic, because that's why we all fell in love with the game in the first place.
Jamie, because Simon's answers there have covered so much of the context of the sort of 4 key themes of the football development framework: positive environment, planning and structure, the football offer, and the education piece as well. When it all comes together, it's no surprise really that Harrogate Town have been on the rise that they have. And it's not easy, by the way, those levels of football, to get promotions like in the manner and style that they've done.
Yeah, absolutely, Charlotte. And one of the questions I was going to say to Simon on the call tonight, Simon, we've got some of our most progressive community clubs. You know, these clubs, as you know, and I know you're a father as well, and that's quite, you know, something that you're passionate about with your children, etc., and what a family club you've created. But do you think some of those core identities are almost irrelevant of whether it's performance or participation, from whether it's the club or the coaching environment? Do you think those principles can be laid down almost in any club of any level? Do you think there's some basic principles that almost the game sort of abides by?
Yeah, definitely. I think the more evolved we've become and developed as a club, you can be a bit stronger with the non-negotiables and stick to your real values and simplify it right down, you know, and we don't have them plastered on the walls or anything, but because I think, well, you should know, you know, coming to us in the recruitment, you know, in the talks about bringing a player, it's about us learning about them as people and just making sure there's nothing worse than losing a game of football, which we all love, when someone hasn't tracked back. And it's the same off the pitch. You know, if someone is coming to buy a ticket, you know, we've been through those moments as a club where you go in and you've heard that someone hasn't been treated kindly on the front desk, and you go, oh, we're doing all that, and then right in the front desk we're letting ourselves down. And then in the community, it's been massive. I mean, hugely important for ourselves to grow as a club by branching out within Harrogate on the community projects. You know, I think the first one was a drugs rehab unit within Harrogate, and I coached a five-a-side there, and there were some great people involved, and that was one of the most rewarding times, because you thought that they're celebrating a goal in a five-a-side competition, and they've been on heroin, you know, for months and years in some respects, and but you felt like we're involving people within Harrogate, which is our area, and suddenly we were talking about our rather than it's out there somewhere. You know, we fell in love with. I fell in love with the area, and people sort of bought into, embraced what we're about.
What you described there as well, I think, encapsulates a sort of more modern, well-rounded manager, perhaps. Like perhaps traditionally a first team manager, you know, the primary focus, of course, is getting those 3 points on a Saturday. But for clubs going up the pyramid, actually, managers do tend to be far more aware of things like budgetary controls, that community outreach, and so on. Is that something that you were always conscious of? And is it something that, you know, looking ahead to your career, that you always want to retain a part of as a manager and a leader?
Yeah, I mean, I do want success. I'm really hungry for it, but at the same time, there's a responsibility to aim for that sustainability at the club, and because the last thing I want is short-term success and then what a legacy of it actually just crashed and burned after a few years because it wasn't supported financially, you know, and locally. We couldn't level it up, you know, with the finances coming in. So it was about embracing the community, but we have people in the community now making sure that they take up good initiatives, and we've got a big family stand in 900 there, and that was built over the shell of a previous stand that was built by one of the directors in the 80s. And, you know, it's the feel-good factors there, but it is important. I think it always will be, because I think whether it's family money or somewhere, it comes from somewhere. It comes from somewhere, and we want a future.
As Jamie mentioned.
Yeah, sorry, I was just jumping in there, Simon. Would it be fair to say that the football offer that you've created, when you had your 3 GPs, which was that obviously a catalyst for, you know, I know Charlotte loves the girls and women's game, and she's sort of really driving an agenda of girls and women's. We've got recreational, we've got, you know, walking football, we've got all these, and I know you really embrace that as a club, all formats of it. Did the environment and the sort of physical environment help sort of the club create that sort of next stage of its journey? And sort of the flip to that was you then got challenged that you had a sort of firework when you got promoted, because all of a sudden you've got to deal with something that's been, you know, been absolute core to your identity, and then you have to deal with it when, you know, almost a bit of success, isn't it, I suppose?
Yeah, I think it was particularly trying before we got the 3G, because we thought, well, you're talking about identity and style of play. Well, we didn't have facilities, so we were training on a poor pitch as it was. And it's okay, people having philosophies and there's DNAs, you know, the catchphrases now, but wanted to play good football, but it was like a cabbage patch, and so we went down the route of the 3G, and it helped launch us as a club, because we could play a certain style of football, but we could have young aspirational players on it, all different year groups, and we made our player development centre. So from 5 to 17, we were coaching twice a week, and we built it up from there in the quarters of the pitch, and we'd roll the 5-side goals off before Tuesday night games and Saturday afternoon games, and it was a source of revenue for us, but it also built our fan base up.
Yeah, it's so many different aspects go into sort of growing a club and building that success both on and off the pitch. And you mentioned the evolving journey that's gone on at Harrogate Town. And for people like Jamie and I and those on the call, we see all of the success. But of course, with change, sometimes comes resistance. And I wondered, did you ever face resistance, both sort of internally and externally, in the manner in which you wanted to do things as a manager? And how did you cope with that? And what tips would you give for anyone who is, back where you were all those years ago, trying to embed a different DNA, trying to build a culture?
Yeah, it was hard to start with. There were lots of doors banged in my face. I remember one at a local school where I knocked on the door and said, "Can we use your AstroTurf? Is there any time, in the weekly diary for us to fit in half a pitch?" And the guy said, "Well, when your reserve team manager that's been there a few years pays back several £1,000s, that you're in debt as a club." And the things weren't always run in a straight way, and that hurt me, because suddenly you're tired with the same brush, and so we had to clean up the act. We had to get the concessions right, back in, for the elderly supporters to be able to come and watch at a reduced rate, and win back a few friends just by being straight, So it's it was hard. It was hard to establish, and then my dad got involved after 2 years. But then at least the important thing for us is giving us stability, but also we sing from the same hymn sheet, and I think it definitely is an advantage for me and for us as a club, because there isn't that going over my head to the chairman, or no one's moaning about the chairman to me. And so it's quite a quirky situation, but one we still have to take advantage of, because we get on well, and we've done all right so far.
Yeah, I mean, you've done very well, way more than all right. But of course, it is an interesting dynamic, and it's one I kind of wanted to ask, really. Does it add, I guess, that unified spirit to everything you do? And has it been a benefit having both that father and son relationship and chairman and manager relationship? Because it sets an example to everyone else about that kind of unified approach and culture you want.
Yeah, I mean, it like I said before, it's unique. I mean, with it, sometimes I've been on a great run recently, and you feel I feel like I'm letting him down when we don't get results, and there's pressure because we've had a bit of success, and got to stay in the league, got to aim higher, got to keep going. I'm always conscious of that, but at the same time, he knows that he'll get a certain level of honesty, and he hasn't, to quote him anyway, he hasn't had to think about the change of manager since he's come in. And probably there is that understanding, well, there will be ups and downs as a club like Harrogate Town, like many others will. But, we never try and reinvent the wheel. We're not saying we're playing Barcelona-type football, but people understand that, they have to buy into a culture of never say die, and we are in it together. And my mum never gets mentioned, and she should do. She, 1 minute I can be having stern words in a changing room like any other manager when you've not performed well, and then 20 minutes later the lads are boarding the bus and my mum and dad are there and she's handing cake out, and you think, how does this work? But somehow I do think it's important that everyone's got a role and feel valued, and that includes my mum, because she's equally as passionate as my dad.
That's such a good point, because lots of the clubs that are on this call rely heavily on volunteers, and that feeling of empowerment that you get when you contribute and you have a role at a football club is very, very special, and football clubs simply wouldn't survive without them, and they're certainly not going to be sustainable without them. You mentioned it earlier, and it's something I wanted to touch upon, seeing the young fans wearing Harrogate Town shirts out and about, spreading that culture far and wide. And I wanted to ask you how you felt the 3G pitch helped you go about that, because I guess it gave you a bit of a weapon in your armory, I suppose, to welcome different people from the community, and then in turn they go away with your club crest and then they want to be ambassadors for you.
Yeah, well, it was a dream ticket, the growth of the Player Development Centre, because they were playing on the home surface, so it is special as a child playing under floodlights, So we had that, and we had that participation right from 5. Like I say, with the big open smiles, and they're hard to control those sessions, aren't they? Where balls are flying everywhere, but suddenly we've got Harrogate Town balls. We've got the merchandise, we've got the bright. We had to change the branding, because it was amber before. It was a bit miserable, to be honest. The kit colour. So we went for bright yellow and a bit more. Sound like wannabes here, but a bit like Borussia Dortmund. We went that style. We thought, no, it's got to be modern. It's got to be fresh. We've got to have them in bright yellow, so it's bright on these winter nights. It's not cold in Harrogate on a Tuesday, Thursday night, and they were all running onto the pitch, the home surface, and of course that's made it was disappointing in some respects having to rip it up to go to grass again, and it's a shame because as a business model it was really thriving, but we've had partnership locally and successfully with a really good school in Harrogate, so we've just relocated there, and it doesn't have quite the same effect, but it definitely did launch us as a club, the 3G.
So Simon, your journey then in terms of your organic growth and obviously that catalyst. So for the clubs on here tonight, would it be right in saying now you've now sort of split your football offer? And I'm guessing now your community department now do the recreational activity, the soccer schools, the camps, the player centres, etc. The traditional sort of what me and you would probably know as football in the community journey.
Yes.
And now the club has had to start sort of looking at a performance pathway as well, which, in modern language would be the academy system. So you've probably had to wrestle with participation and performance. And at a certain stage, I'm guessing yourself, the board, you've really had to plan and think out what is best for you as a club in an environment that, which I'd imagine in your area is quite competitive with some big clubs on your doorstep.
It is competitive, but we're that far apart from the likes of Leeds at the minute that we thought the best way for us is not to be elitist and take away from the Sunday league clubs, for the junior football, and just to add coaching into that system. So we haven't got games on Sundays and Saturdays for the youngsters. We just provide coaching up to the age of 16. And then we have the outlet of BTEC in sport, or the Cap 4 late development model with EPPP. And that's professional basically in the old school YTS. So that's under 18s football to 16, 17-year-olds. But before that, the Player Development Centre is hopefully creating a conveyor belt of talent through to that. And we've actually just signed a lad from our PDC who's come up almost all the way, but certainly from 10, 11 up to now, our youth team turning pro, which that's exciting, and that should enthuse more youngsters in the local area. But, we didn't want an academy system. When we first started out, there was elitist, and then bringing them in for a trial, getting rid of them. So whilst we've built it, we've gone to 2 different categories, but no one's getting released. They're just, obviously it gets to an age where 16, where decisions are made, but hopefully, by then we can help them in different pathways. And that's the same when lads may get released. We've got good links to local universities and scholarships in America, and we converse with them throughout to let them know how they're developing and what their plan is.
It's really interesting to hear you speak that way. And Simon, you were totally speaking my language earlier on when you were talking about the marketing and the branding. And this is just like every kind of tick in terms of the work we're trying to do with the programme here. And I think it's important that for those on the call to see that, again, someone at the very top on the footballing side is aware and conscious of all those different things that go into running a football club. Talking about things on the pitch, though, I wanted to ask, what was the main difference between the National League system and the EFL? Where did you find that you had to make the biggest adjustments when you got that promotion in particular?
As a whole club, not just on the football side, you mean infrastructure, personnel. I think, off the pitch, certainly. And it's a long season, isn't it? In terms of all the games. But when you go back to the start of pre-season, we had to really catch up with the governance side and make sure that the ground was up to the required safety standards. And we've built year on year in terms of building the capacity up and the safety. But because there were no fans last year because of COVID, we found that there was a shortfall, and we hadn't read up in certain sections and nailed it. And so pre-season friendlies, we had a couple where, scary from my point of view, we couldn't allow fans in, and you think, oh my word, we've looked for this opportunity, we're getting now attracting bigger clubs, we can get some revenue in, we can build links with other clubs, and we got prohibited for the first couple of pre-season friendlies. And we had to get the safety advisory group in. We had to work with them, and that governance stepping up to Football League, that really does come under scrutiny. So we had to do it right, but it was a bit panic stations. We were a bit behind the game in that aspect.
Did you find that you received much support from governing bodies to help you with that, or was it literally just a case of kind of rolling your sleeves up and getting on with it?
Yeah, I think the support was there, but I think being probably the smaller club in the Football League, I think it's right. There's got to be certain standards and regulations that we were under the spotlight, and it's a small stadium, and so but we have requirements to adhere to, and I think we learned the hard way in the summer. Hang on a minute, no, we actually need to catch up here, and it's been swept under the carpet. So there's a book of regulations, for the ground criteria that, and all the safety side, which is hugely important with these bigger crowds, that we needed to pack a lot of work in, and there needed to be a control room that needed to be finished off. But these are things that prerequisites they have to sort, because we're promoted, and and they hadn't been sorted. But it was a real team effort. Everyone dug in and got us through, and now we're building again, and there's plans afoot to increase the capacity to 6,000 in the next 2 years.
Simon, just listening to you there, you obviously have a broad knowledge of some of the things going on at the club, and probably, some would argue that's probably because of the dynamic of the relationships in place at the club. Do you think that makes you a better manager? And is that sort of, purposely part of your sort of learning journey? One of the things we're talking about is how do we invest into, club leaders, the chairman, the directors. But I think it's also really important that we really invest and support certainly those guys in semi-pro who are probably not fortunate, to be able to access PFA courses and some of the FA courses because they're juggling full-time jobs. They've got family. They're already trying to, step 2, 3, 4. They're traveling all over the country. So, all that sort of dynamic. You're obviously in a fortunate position now. So is that purposeful? And is that something that you think is sort of an important part of our offer as an FA going forward in terms of investing into people?
Well, I think it's brilliant. When you initially called me about it, I think you can put the experience in, and in some cases, a lot of people do learn the hard way. And I said before about doors being closed in your face, but if people can access information and lean on experience, it can only help people's infrastructure and cut down on wasted time, and mistake after mistake that for example, I've made and mentioned about that. Experience is important. I don't know if it makes me a better manager, but I care for the club. I know that for sure because I have to, because it's vitally important for my own identity that things are done right. I live local, my kids go to school. They all know that they're just entering through the front door, actually. But they've got kids wearing Harrogate Town shirts, and I've got a 6 and a 9-year-old, and it's so important that people run it right, and they have friends at school that go to soccer camps in Harrogate, and if it's not done right, I'll be told, and that'll get me riled. But thankfully, we've got a brilliant group of people, coaching staff that do the right thing and do run it right and won't get caught out by cutting corners.
So some of those sort of performance areas that you sort of really developed on, and now I'm guessing you focus more and more as you've gone into the league role. What are some of the tips? So we'll have chairman on here tonight, thinking that, well, how can we with a limited budget look at analysis and scouting and sports science and the nutrition and all that, where the game's moving at such a level. And, as somebody who's probably 1 foot in pro, 1 foot in semi-pro, I see where particularly, the big clubs are going with investment into football development. Have you got any ideas and any tips you could share with some of the clubs, how you maybe on limited budgets have sort of gone about that on your sort of journey from non-league into the league?
Yeah, I mean, going back to the initial first few years, I had a friend at York St John University, and we accessed a lecturer there who then got friendly with us, understood that we didn't have a big budget at all to play with, but wanted experience, wanted to get into the sector. So we were good for each other, and with that, we were basically giving experience to a student, 13 years ago, and he's now back with us full time as an analyst, and so he got good experience. And in those days, then it was right. Come along with us. We'll learn about each other. Can you? And it was notepad and pen analysis at halftime. Come on, how many crosses into the box, for example? Like, can you give me feedback? And we learnt from that. That established a relationship with a really good university, and then through the years we've pulled on that and got students in at vastly reduced rate, thankfully, and so we've filled roles like that. But initially, with the analysis going full time, when there's been moments that I think, well, I want to know a bit more about Wyscout. It's about asking Wyscout, and yes, there was an initial payment made to Wyscout and Hudl that are in line with each other, but they were brilliant people because they taught me on the laptop how to clip videos and do my own analysis. And we played at Colchester last year, and there's reams of people working for them. I couldn't believe it. And there was just myself, goalkeeper coach, and Paul Thirlwell. And I said, "Who else have you got?" Well, we've got physios on the coach dealing with all the kit, and she's also the kit person, and basically the mother hen of the group, dealing with all the food. And it's kept it nice and intimate, that. But this year we got a bit too much with all the analysis as well. So we brought Glenn back in from all those years ago, and we haven't lost that intimate feel.
Joined us today. He asks, as you've climbed the ladder of success, at what point did you find that you could not rely so much on volunteer positions, which you kind of touched upon there, but perhaps you could kind of share a little bit more with us?
Oh, that isn't easy, getting the balance. You need your volunteers, and we've tried to look after them, even if with kits or with jackets, just because they are so important. Whether it's opening gates or collecting gear. When we had the 3G, we've got an older group of gentlemen who are like, I take them a bit and call them lasses of the summer wine, but they keep the paintwork immaculate all around the ground, and it's been important, just to give a little bit of money out sometimes without being excessive and killing ourselves. But there's certain roles that can't be volunteers either, that we have to give responsibilities out and with that be accountable for, and it grows beyond being a volunteer, because you can't use people to the extent where you go, hang on a minute, he's been in so many hours. We've just got a club shop now in Harrogate, and the lady who runs the shop had another job, and it got to the point where she had to say, well, I'm doing this many hours, it's exceeding far too, and we had to weigh it all up and think, well, it's the growth, growth of the merchandise, the growth of selling, the revenue coming in, right? Well, we have to make decisions, but what we can't do is abuse people's time and interest. So we had to make her a better offer, and then that's really worked back for us. So that's just one example, but it is a tough one because I don't think you can discard volunteers, nor would you want to very easily. You've got to give them opportunities.
Yeah, giving volunteers opportunities as well to, as you mentioned, learn, develop, feel a part of it, even if it is the token of a bit of kit as well that makes them feel part of something. Again, it links back to identity, and you can see like why we put these things together, because they do all overlap so much. On a more personal note now, I want to ask, through your career, obviously you have had a lot of success, and as you mentioned, football has many highs and lows, but for you, what if you had to pick out were and have been the key milestones of your career in football?
A tough playing career, but lots of ups and downs, more downs than ups. I would say I love managing more. I really miss the feeling of that physical work on a Saturday, and for me, it was the glory was blocking a tackle or heading across away, and really getting stuck into it. I just love the game, but as a manager, just managing a good group of honest people have been highlights. But the real highlights, milestones, are the 2016-17 when we started launching, the 3G, the following year promotion, the first year of full time. That was great feeling. We got promoted on a balmy Saturday in May 2018, and then going up obviously through Wembley from the National League 2 years after that, and it was just a wonderful day. Would have been better with fans in the stadium, but that was COVID, and but they were like key moments, and will live with me forever. And it was brilliant that the children were there the first time round. They weren't allowed at Wembley, unfortunately, but they were celebrating at home.
It's really fascinating to hear, and it will provide people with a lot of inspiration as well, I think. When you had those kind of big days out and big trips out to Wembley and the promotions, did they serve as catalysts for the success, or did you actually find it is more those dedicated hours put in on a daily basis that help your growth? Or is it maybe a bit of a combination of both kind of coming hand in hand?
I think success, breeds that belief that, oh, hang on a minute, we're riding a wave of optimism and momentum, and there's so much positivity in the building that, when we got into the National League, we thought, oh, what's this going to be like? Sutton at home, first game, and we went 1-0 down after 20 minutes. I thought, oh, this is it. These are massive. We're up against it. And then the lads settled. And, and at the minute, we've still got 7 lads who played in the National League North with us and went up with us, the 11 lads from the National League. And they're doing us proud, and we're so proud of their efforts. But it's the long, hard hours, isn't it? I think it's just not an easy game, and it's the grafting and the coming together, and it's the relief as much as the elation when you get the 3 points, but it's the pure excitement of being on that journey, thinking, hang on a minute, playoffs are this many points, we're in the playoffs, can we hunt them down? And then the recruitment gets exciting because people have wanted to be more interested in Harrogate and more interested in how it works and being part of it.
So Simon, you mentioned there about sort of planning and sort of obviously where the game's moving to, particularly on sort of things like the pro license courses and those. Could you just share a couple of examples of how you and your dad as sort of chair and manager would sort of plan out and the importance of planning? And I'm guessing, whilst you want to plan and sort of structure at the start of the season and what your ambitions are, you also, I'm guessing, have to be fluid, and you probably sit down, I guess, quite formally. And it's something we're really encouraging. Certainly, as the clubs go through, the pyramid and climb up the pyramid, the importance of the boardroom and the football staff getting together. The days, and I think back of playing non-league 10, 15 years ago, a little bit of, the back of a fag packet, as they would call it then. It's fair to say those days are moving on, aren't they? In professional game, there's a lot of planning that goes on between, shall we say, the boardroom and the football department.
100%. It's strategic planning, so long term, but also I go back to 2016, end of 2016-17, where we're talking about we had a board meeting, and I proposed going full time and how it would look, and how we'd operate on a very similar budget to how we were part time, and this would change the identity, and we get young aspirational players in, and I had to prove it, but everything's budgeted for, whether it's the kit coming in, and we've tightened right up on it from where we were. We didn't, loose ends were costly. The kit, keep going on about kit, but there was a lot of wastage from that, what we were buying in. My dad would argue that, there was still wastage on loans, the medical equipment. I've been in trouble for, in terms of, but it's hard to control injuries. I keep saying that. But all these things are budgeted, and as you see the spreadsheets, and if someone's on appearance money and it gets put down accurately, well, you expect him to play 35 games, so that gets on the budget. So the worst case scenario, this is the bottom line, and how we're going to bring it in, what sponsorships, and I feel we genuinely stand a decent chance of establishing ourselves as a strong club at whatever level, because now the backroom team, we've got a chief executive, Sarah Barry, who came in from the local radio station, who just ran that. She set an atmosphere that was electric there, always exceeded targets, but she picks up on all the loose ends, and it makes me tighter, when players are agents come in demanding these days, and we don't want to be taken for a ride, and it's important, especially with our structure, that it is important. It really is important to budget and to plan, and that's why the 3G was really good, because we could foresee revenue and that capital return very quickly.
Again, another really insightful answer. Thank you, Simon. And I'm conscious that we're hurtling towards that hour mark, and we have plenty of questions from people to pose to you. So I would advise anyone on the call that wants to ask a question, do so now. We have a really good question, actually. Where do you see your level of ambition as a club, and is that aligned to that of your supporters?
I'm not sure. We're hell bent on pleasing everyone, but there's always going to be aspects of people thinking, "Oh, we should have gone up this year again, and then up again from League One." And but I think as a club, I've said it today at the club, we can achieve again, and it's important. The first 2 years getting to 50 points. We're at 47 at the minute, but establishing ourselves, and it's that then can we then get to mid-table, and then top 10, pushing top 7, and it might sound a bit boring, but we don't want to just smash it financially, and the growth of the fan base not be in line. It's more a case of that for us. We're building up to the capacity of 6,000. With that, I still think we can be competitive on what we pay, without being crazy, and bringing revenue streams where actually we can make it work. And therefore, we could be League One. We'd be a small League One, but with our identity and sticking rigidly to it, and making sure we don't change the feel about the place, I think we could be competitive at that level. I'm not underestimating that it is a sizable leap again, but there are examples like Accreditation, Stanley, Burton, that people have done wonderful jobs at those clubs and propelled them forward, and we just got to strive, because I think if you set a ceiling, it can quickly sort of encourage a flat atmosphere in the terraces as well.
That's such a brilliant answer. And you might see there's a little kind of club crest behind me. I work at Bromley Football Club, and all of our team, including manager Andy Midman, was sat around a table today talking about how we're going to get 30,000 people to Wembley and so on. And hearing your answer there is kind of the same that we were talking about in our roundtable discussion and planning today. And it leads really nicely to another question that we've had in. The promotion, the success in the Vars and so on, was that by planning, or do you think that's a byproduct of the values and the non-negotiables that you put in place as a leadership?
I think we gave ourselves a better chance by stamping down, So probably years ago, I might have thought, oof, that's a cheesy saying, or but no, it's important if you're putting values down to carry them out, and I think I keep saying it, but it's the people who drive the club, inside the club, whether it's Sarah Barry, where it's, Abby, the secretary, Paul Thirlwell's unbelievable as an assistant manager. His clarity of message is second to none as a coach, he demands it from players every day, and he allows me to sit back and observe the characteristics that we want and stick to. So I think the clarity has helped us. He's helped me with that, and everyone supporting each other has given ourselves the best possible chance, because I think the lads who we brought in are sort of bought into, actually, it's pretty uncomplicated, this. The plan for the player development centre is really uncomplicated. I remember just getting A4 piece of paper, myself and Paul, and drawing a couple of lines on it. That's the quarters. Can we get 15? If we get over 15, we need 2 coaches on, because people think we're just grabbing money. It has to be quality, and I think the simple things that have worked better than whenever I get too complicated with anything.
And Brian has posted a question. He says sustainability is key for a club at our level. We have around 27 junior teams, boys, girls, disability, and a link to a semi-professional club. Do you have any advice towards making sure your foundations are solid?
Oh, just that I think the coaches all have to be in line. I mean, it's a lot of youngsters there, and I remember going into our play development centre when you've seen our juniors, and a couple of times I thought, where's it heading this, and it doesn't. They can be fun sessions, they can be great, but if there's a coach and he's dawdling with his phone or he's answering his pockets all session, there's not the energy. I think that's as important as anything, and you can see the sessions, and I think it's a brilliant thing to be linked with a semi-professional team, and it's those relationships and keeping those thriving that will probably see more growth.
And if you could give yourself, or the Simon Weaver that was just about to do his first kind of coaching session, one piece of advice, what would you say to him?
Don't tie yourself in knots as many times as you are going to in the next few years, about overthinking, overcomplicating. Sense it's about what the players feel comfortable with, about what everybody feels comfortable with, and that clarity of thought process, and this is what we're about, this is what we're going to do. Don't overthink it. Don't overthink it, and make sure that people are driving in excited about the game with the music on the cars, whether it's fans, people in the office, people playing for you, rather than thinking, where did he want me to go here? What was the message? Or just it's not clever being over academic and confusing people. And I've done that a few times, but hopefully I'm learning lessons.
Do I get the impression, Simon, you believe in brilliant basics?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. And I think I remember years ago, Don Howe, who worked for the FA under Bobby Robson, and he came and took a session at Middlewood Road, Sheffield Wednesday training ground. He was just brilliant as a coach, and he was so clear, and had us moving all over the park. Movement off the ball was just something new, for us back then. And but he was immaculate. The session was immaculate, and it was clear his objectives. And I think that goes through a club. If it's simple, not too many points. Because I think we can make it too academic sometimes.
Before I move on to ask Simon some quick fire questions, I think over the past hour, what's been so clear to me is, again, that point of how the elements of the self-assessment, they do overlap so much, from the pieces. How many times has Simon, the lead of football development, mentioned identity, touched upon a bit of marketing, which we've got coming up next week. And as we know, without the proper governance in place, Harrogate Town wouldn't have even been able to compete through those divisions as well. It's so important to get those principles and those basics right.
Absolutely spot on, Charlotte. And I think the one thing I'm picking up from Simon, and I've spoken to him now a couple of times, obviously, pre this call, is this consistency about open-mindedness and his willingness to sort of learn, to go out to see other clubs. You mentioned Burton Albion. I genuinely think, and I was fortunate to spend a year at Burton, and I think they're one of the best stories in modern football. I think the last 15, 20 years for a club like that to come from, when I was playing non-league 15 years ago, they were a step 2, step 1 non-league football club in this Midlands area. And now I think Simon would echo, they are established middle of the road football league club, aren't they? And they haven't done that by luck. They've done that by hard work, good people, good planning. But this willingness, and I've just listened to it for the last hour, the willingness to be open-minded, to embrace sort of new ways of working, and then actually to bring it back home to what works for you, I think is absolutely crucial, because what's right for Burton Albion won't be right for Harrogate Town or for Bromley or another club or any other club. But what we all can do is take something from each other. And I think that's what we're trying to do on this program, isn't it, Charlotte? Is how do we embrace the good of the game, the developments in the game? There's some brilliant work going on in the non-league pyramid and the community game. But if we can connect it, and through digital landscape now, we've got an opportunity with some investment that's coming down. And, we've heard about investment in the last week coming from the top of the game into the non-league pyramid. I think with people like Simon sort of out there, I think, with modern leaders that we know, I think the game has sort of got a great opportunity, not just at professional level, semi-professional and the amateur, grassroots game for our next generation.
Jamie, I completely agree with you. And before I ask Simon the quickfire questions, Paul has managed to sneak a last-minute question in and says, you've talked about how important the 3G pitch was for the club and the commercial payback. How much of that has benefited and helped outside of the top adult sides, i.e. how much has it benefited your junior sides and the local community?
Yeah, like I say, it was mostly the player development centre. So we've had a games programme, but not taken away. So it's not weekly games, but there'll be some in the Easter holidays down at the school now. So it's definitely developed that games programme, which was brilliant. And you've seen them then take pride in the club and supporters. So it's a double whammy for us. The wider community, yeah, we used to have schools finals, and as long as they wore the correct footwear, we just got them all immersed in it. Really, different cup finals, even adults locally as well, different groups, and then we'd have 5-a-side leagues on it as well. And yeah, it was sort of my carpet. Really, I really cared for it. If someone wore it some studs, you'd be like, oh, nightmare. But yeah, we tried to look after it. But yeah, and walking football, they had it on Thursday afternoons, and they were quick to tell us that our first team session was time up because they were walking on and taking over.
I love that. That's brilliant. Simon, we are so grateful to you for giving up your time. I have 3 quick fire questions for you now. And the first being, what is the best thing that football has given you?
Just an absolute joy in my life that I don't know what else I could do to have that joy, just a lot of happiness. And it's almost, you hate the pain of losing, but you can't have the jeopardy without the absolute elation of winning. And, I've been lucky to work with great people. I think that's more important than anything.
And what is the best thing that football has taught you?
Absolutely be true to yourself. And sometimes today I saw players that I have to admit, I think I'm quite patient, but if there's anything where that's dipped below the standard of sort of behaviour and energy that we demand, it can be ragged to a bull. But I think they know me, and so on Saturday things are said, and it can't always be, well, you didn't execute that run back nicely. It's, you're told directly, you're told the truth. But on Monday morning, everything we go again, and it's taught me that has gone. But I just try and be myself.
And who's been the biggest influence on you and Harrogate Town?
I think, well, I have to say two people. I have to say my dad, because he's managed a lot of people over years, 52 years in the building industry in South Yorkshire. You know, it's no mean feat. And I've seen him from a youngster going in on holidays, looking at how he communicated with people, how people genuinely liked him, would do things for him for the benefit of that trade, you know, of that business, and how he grew it. He used to go to even the Christmas parties and say, "Oh, that's evolved there over the years, and that's been brought in, and he's put that together, that deal," and that's a team. So that's been massive for me, you know, my learning curve over years, and I can see his subtlety at times, but his directness at other times. And then I would say Paul Thirlwell's clarity of coaching, I think, is, as I already said, just purposeful, respectful, old school in some ways, modern in other ways. And so they're the two people that, you know, I lean on more than anyone.
And final question, what's your one piece of advice that you would give to those tuned in listening on how to go about becoming and remaining an effective, efficient and sustainable football club?
Again, I would say just don't feel a bit big time actually answering that question, you know, saying this is the rules. But I think just from my point of view, probably learning from the hard way that it's got to be true to the values and genuine people involved, you know, especially, you know, us as a small club. You know, we've had a lot of characters come and go, and you go, actually, they weren't solid. Start by being solid, you know, and sharing moments, good or bad, with those people who stand by you makes you confident that you can succeed in the long term.
Simon, look, thank you so much. We've had lots of comments coming through already, thanking you for your insight, your passion and your belief shine through, and I echo those sentiments. So thank you so much. It's been a really interesting webinar once again.
Thank you very much for having me on. Really appreciate it.
And Jamie, we now move on to the fourth and final webinar coming up next, and it's my subject that I love most, marketing and communications. And we have Andy Walker from the Football Association joining us.
Yeah, I'm going to be sitting in the stands for that one, aren't I, Charlotte? You two are going to go on, I can do it. But what I would say is, you know, we've gone from obviously, you know, Spencer to John Devine, Simon, and then Andy Walker. And the one common thread, and I hope everybody understands this, is all of these guys, no matter what their roles are in the game, they are really active at the game at this level of people on this call tonight, be it, you know, step 2, 3, 4, where we've got club leaders on, right into the community game, some of our most progressive clubs, all of these guys, and Andy's no different, a chairman of a community club. And I'm sure as much as he will talk and you will talk about those professional experiences, his passion is football, isn't it, Charlotte?
Absolutely, absolutely. So please make sure you go and sign up for that webinar, and also connect with us on our online community as well, where we'll be picking up lots of different parts about this football development subject and lots more as well. But for now, we're going to finish with some top tips on football development.